You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is Juneteenth, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have a special guest, somebody who has a real history with the Libertarian Party and the Liberty Movement, Mark Hinkle. So he has been the California chair of the Libertarian Party and the national LNC chair as well. So we're going to hear all kinds of great perspective on where the Liberty Movement is and what his journey's been through that. But before we get into all that, let me introduce you to the rest of our panel. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper left-hand corner, we have our guest, Mark Hinkle, today. And my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So we always start out the show with a Liberty quote. And usually I find something that's sort of related to the topics that we're going to go over. But today, Mark has provided the quote, and it's a great one. So let's bring that up. Our invisible hand, James, can you bring up the quote of the day? So this one's from Samuel Adams. He is one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He was a governor of Massachusetts, and he's I guess the presumed founder of the Sons of Liberty, which maybe they were kind of like the first libertarians, I guess you might say. I don't know. But it's a great quote. It says, "It does not take a majority to prevail. Rather, an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men." So to me, that's kind of what your mission is as a libertarian. That sort of spells it all out. I can't think of a better quote. What do you guys think of this quote? Mark, it was your quote. What are your insights on this one?
I wish I could tell you when I ran across that quote, but that's been the tagline of every email that I send out, personal and business. It just kind of struck me as that's our role as libertarians, is to be that needle to poke the balloon of big government. And, it just resonated with me from day one. And I'm kind of surprised I haven't gotten like any feedback from either my friends or customers. And occasionally, every once in a while, somebody says, 2 thumbs up. So I'm kind of surprised.
Mark, excuse me 1 second, please. There's a background noise coming through. Is somebody running something in the background, please?
Not sure. But
go ahead, Mark. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mark, I think maybe they're waiting on you to send that beer. That's why they're not responding. Sam Adams beer. That's a great quote, but where's the beer?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, any other guys have any thoughts on this quote before we dive into the show?
Well, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
No, it might have been my mic that was doing the background noise.
Okay.
I think that's what's going on. But anyway, I love the quote. I'm going to have to get my own quote. Maybe that one put on my own emails. It's a good idea. I like that email idea.
Well, I think, the quote is a wonderful quote. And I think freedom and liberty is the essence of what this country is all about. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that quote sort of capture that mantra we have had since the founding of this great land of ours. So I think we are just reinforcing it, and I think that's a good thing. I think everybody in the United States should read this quote, know it, understand it, and understand the meaning of our founding.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, the rest of the show, we're going to jump into the interview. And after the interview, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about my roads in Oakland and the state's inability to apparently fix the roads there, and talk about some election shenanigans as well going on too. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about Mark's experience in the Liberty Movement. And so, Mark, you've been you've worn a lot of hats in the liberty movement, and California Libertarian Party chair, LNC chair. It sounds like you've done just about everything on the way up there. So I guess what set you on fire with liberty? What kind of rang your liberty bell?
Well, good question. So, you know, the book it usually begins with Ayn Rand. Well, my parents, who were kind of friends of the hippie generation and the beatnik generation. I don't know if you gentlemen know the name Allen Ginsberg or Jack Kerouac from the beat.
Yes.
Well, my parents were friends with both of those folks and several other people of the beat generation.
Wow. Okay.
So I was introduced to counterculture way back when as a teenager. And my parents decided to take my sister and I to Europe for 3.5 months to travel around. And when they decided, okay, we're going to have time in the hotel late at night, what do? Watch Italian TV? Well, I don't speak Italian. My sister doesn't speak Italian. So what are we going to do? So my mother decided to bring a copy of Atlas Shrugged and said, "Here, Mark, read this." And it took me about 6 weeks to read it.
How old were you at this time?
17.
Okay.
And was this in about roughly the 70s or the 60s, roughly in that time frame, or?
Well, I'll date myself by saying I graduated in the class of 69 from high school.
Okay.
Born in 51. And so that kind of sparked my interest in politics. I was very much an introvert, as was my sister. My sister decided to go into the arts and theater, and I went into politics. And when I came back from 3.5 months traveling all around Europe, and I'll delve into that later with a second trip to Europe with a trip into Czechoslovakia 1 month after the Russians invaded in '68. But I decided to come back and went to my local high school. And I don't know if your high school had homeroom senators, little student government. And I nominated myself for the homeroom senator for my homeroom, and they elected me. And I just kind of started doing that sort of stuff. And later on, when I went over to San Jose State, I ran across a kind of a renegade young Americans for Freedom group, the objectivist group. And from there, John Hospers, our very first presidential candidate, came to town and spoke. And it was like a dozen or so folks who gathered around and listened to his speech. And then I followed him down to the student union for a snack afterwards and talked to him for about an hour and a half. And I was pretty impressed. He was quoting right out of Atlas Shrugged for a number of things that he had to say. And come that November, I had a tough decision to make. Do I vote for Richard Nixon or do I vote for John Hospers? And I like telling this story. I was listening to a speech of Richard Nixon. And this is a time where 18-year-olds had the first time to vote as 18-year-olds. And I happened to be 21 at the time, so it didn't really make any difference to me. But it was the first time 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and 20-year-olds could vote. And Nixon addressed the crowd of young people and said, "This is a very important vote, so vote your conscience." So I voted for John Hospers.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Well, it is kind of funny too. It sounds like you got your skeptical taste of government as early as student government. Did that kind of give you lessons that it didn't matter who got elected, the same stuff was going to happen there regardless?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So, and a couple of years later, I got on the Reason mailing list somehow and subscribed to Reason magazine, and we've been subscribers for 50-something years, and ran across some of the local libertarians, people like Bill White, who was one of the founders of the Libertarian Party here in California. I was actually his campaign manager in 1980, who is the first libertarian candidate, partisan candidate, after we achieved ballot status in 1980. And I've been vice chair of the local party, chairman of the local party, served on the state exec-com for, 20 some odd years, on the national party, 12 or 13 years. As you say, I've been national chair, state party chair. And I bill myself as retired chair because I lost my re-election.
Well,
sounded better to be retired than, loser.
Well, there is an interesting question there, I think, and that's also, you were sort of set on fire by John Hospers to sort of, I guess, and Atlas Shrugged to wake up to the message of liberty, it sounds like, and start, I guess, at least voting that way. But what really set you on fire to get involved in the party, sort of to get up and just take action as well? Because, I mean, you certainly have a lifetime of action, it sounds like.
Well, again, I mentioned earlier, both my sister and I were introverts, and I think we both feel something like, we really can't be introverts for all our lives, so let's do something to cross over that threshold and become, well, maybe not extroverts, but at least step out behind the curtain and, get out there and do stuff. Oh, shoot. Hold on a second. I got to unring this phone call. There we go. Sorry about that. Let me turn my cell phone off.
No, that's okay. We've had plenty of unexpected interruptions in the history of the show.
Yeah.
We actually had one guy. He was a gentleman who was a senatorial candidate from Pennsylvania, and he had this. He said something like, "Oh crap," something, and then boom, he was gone. We found out later, I think his cat jumped on his router or something like that, but we had no idea at the time what it was that caused him to exit the show. Anyways, yeah.
Cat ate the router.
Yeah. I say, and getting back to the question at hand, it sort of met my deep-seated need to, sort of get out of my closet and, as it were, and become active in the community. And of course, I ran across some pretty interesting people. Martha O'Connor was the very first objectivist that I ran into, and that Renegade Young Americans for Freedom group. John Hospers, of course, he was a professor at USC. A pretty smart guy in and of itself. And as I became more and more active, I became familiar and friends with people like David Berglund, Sharon Ayers, David Nolan, of course. I served with him on the LNC. And, a whole host of people who are, pretty much the names of people involved in the Libertarian Party leadership. And, most of them, I have their home phone number or their cell phone number. I probably shouldn't say home phone number because no one has a home phone number anymore.
That's true. That's true. Mark, you said a little while ago, you said you spoke to several people who you termed objectionists. Did I get that correct?
Objectivist. That's the philosophical name that Ayn Rand gave to her brand of freedom and philosophy.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Oh boy, I don't claim to be an expert on her philosophy, but
none of us are experts here, so it's okay.
Well, so the root word, of course, is objective, based on fact. She was a big fan of Aristotle, so that was kind of her, philosopher that I think brought her into the real world, and I think, reason and logic were her bedrock of, when you make a decision to do something, is it based on facts? Logically, does it make sense? Does it involve force or fraud? You don't do that. So One of the early conventions that I went to, I think it was in New York in 1975, they did a survey of the attendees, the delegates who attended the convention, and they asked them, what book or books did you read? 90% had read Atlas Shrugged.
Oh, wow.
And I think Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson, I think, was read by something like 50% of the, I mean, it was pretty overwhelming. Now, as time goes on, of course, more and more people came to the Libertarian Party outside of the objectivist movement and Ayn Rand. Oddly enough, Ayn Rand apparently thought of libertarians as hippies from the right, which I don't think was a fair assessment, but, you know, to each his own. She clearly had a big influence on early libertarians. And so anyhow, and, you know, from my standpoint, Atlas Shrugged is a great book. I've read it twice. The movie, it wasn't the greatest movie. I'd really like to see something like Amazon or HBO do a miniseries and do it, you know, do it really well. But you know, periodically I hear rumors every once in a while that somebody is wanting to do that, but so far nothing's come to fruition.
Well, you know, this is one of the problems we always deal with in the liberty movement is that, you know, once you start talking about, I guess, smaller government and therefore less government handouts, and suddenly, you know, people think we're sort of the meanies, and it's you know, it seems to be hard to get people on board for these productions. I know with the Atlas Shrugged production, the first one that they made in the series of 3 that they did for the movie, it actually, the production value seemed fairly decent, but then the second one, I think everything started to fall apart with being able to line people up, and people, big stars that they were trying to get, suddenly they, you know, found out, hey, this doesn't match with my politics, kind of thing, I think, and they just sort of shy away. So,
well, and again, like, you know, the main characters were different actors in each of the movies, and you know, you like, you know, Raiders of the Lost Ark or the, you know, Harry Potter trilogies, you wouldn't interchange actors from one movie to the other.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
yeah. It becomes like some of those daytime soap operas, you know, you're watching a soap opera, and then some character, they suddenly decide to swap out, you know. You don't feel that sense of continuity, you know.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I guess Marlon Brando must have been okay for him to play the role of a mafia don in Godfather. I must have aligned with his political values or something, that he was allowed to, he allowed himself to the honor of doing that. I mean, if everybody's going to be consistently consistent around here.
Yeah, somehow that falls in with politics. I don't know why. But one of the
it's top-down central planning. I'll grant you that one.
That's true. Yeah. But you know, one of the things I did want to ask you about, Mark, you having worn so many hats, and I guess, you know, it's kind of a mystery to so many people. What happens at the kind of high levels in these parties, and the fact that you've been the LP chair of California and the LP national chair, I guess could you give people a sense, I guess, of sort of what goes on behind the scenes? You know, what sort of the business is that you have to tackle when you're up at those levels?
Well, as you can imagine, it's an involuntary organization. Of course, you can't force anybody to do anything. Even people, when we had paid staff, you know, there's an incentive for the paid staff to do as you ask. But libertarians, I think, being the individualists that we are, you know, we don't order people to do things. We say, you know, hey, dear executive director, we'd like you to do X, Y, and Z. What do you think? Get some feedback. And in general, when libertarians are cooperative, things happen, and when we're not cooperative, things don't happen. So there is a meritocracy kind of built into a volunteer organization, regardless of whether it's a Libertarian Party or not. But particularly libertarians being really individualistic, And as a little side note, that's one of the things that really bothers me about this Mises caucus is they seem to vote lockstep, which is so alien to me from a libertarian standpoint. I remember as state party chairman going to a national convention, a presidential convention. And, when the Republicans and Democrats announce, this great state of California casts X number of votes for this and that. Well, my little spiel was the, omnipotent state of California casts, 50 votes for this candidate and 50 votes for that candidate. And because we never voted as a lockstep, we always were split 2 to 5 different ways. And everyone was okay with that. So this is an anomaly in the history of the Libertarian Party where groups seem to vote lockstep. Again, I don't know if you either attended or watched the most recent convention in D.C., but members of the Mises Caucus had signs that said yes on one side and no on the other side. And their kind of stewards were apparently they agreed ahead of time what they were going to support or oppose, and they would hold up the sign saying no or yes, depending on. And as a group, they pretty much voted lockstep, which is mind-boggling to me.
It does sound a little collectivist.
You think, Jason? You think? I can say that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, because I do find that, as far as like the Mises Institute and stuff like that I agree with a lot of the things, but I haven't had a chance to talk to many people who are part of the Mises caucus specifically. So it's hard to know exactly what's, I've heard Dave Smith a fair amount, but I haven't, had too much opportunity. In fact, we've actually tried to reach out to people who are specifically in the Mises caucus just to kind of get their perspectives, but we just haven't had a lot of luck. So I'm not sure why.
Yeah, well, and again, I can't name names because I don't really remember all the names, but there have been a few people here in California who were part of the Mises Caucus, but for one reason or another were excommunicated, and they're persona non grata. And so this is so unlike libertarians that I've grown up with over the last 50 years. It just kind of boggles my mind.
It almost sounds like the objectivists in a way, because my understanding was, listening to Walter Block and some of the others, is that, you really couldn't disagree with Ayn Rand if you were part of the group. So I guess it didn't fly very well if that was the case. So,
I was never in the inner. I was never in the.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was never in the inner circle. In fact, I never even met Ayn Rand, but I do know some people who did, and they confirmed that you didn't want to go up against her and oppose her in any substantial way, and you become persona non grata and out of the inner circle. So it is kind of like that. You're right, Jason.
But yes, what has been such? Timmy wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
Well, again, I don't know a whole lot about the Mises. I mean, obviously, Ludwig von Mises is the economist, and there is the Mises Institute, which, as far as I know, is wholly separate from the Mises Caucus.
It is.
One is political, and one is an economic research think tank. So again, I was saying I'm on the outside, so they're not going to let me know what's going on the inside. I look at what has happened with the Mises Caucus. They said they were going to take over the Libertarian Party, which from a marketing standpoint is pretty bad advertising. No one wants to be taken over. So if they're trying to come into the Libertarian Party and persuade people, hey, this is the way to go. Well, there's a way to do that. You show up at the meetings and you vote for your candidates and you get them elected and you back them and you volunteer and you pay your dues and contribute where you can. They didn't seem to do that. They just came in and said, we're going to buy votes I know personally on the local level here in Santa Clara County, they tried to take over the Libertarian Party of Santa Clara County by recruiting people who literally paid their dues the day before our annual meeting, some of which were out of county. And Joe Dean, who's our county chair, bless his pea picking heart, the day before went down to the registrar and voter's office and got an updated list of all the registered libertarians in Santa Clara County. And 4 or 5 of them who were delegates to our Zoom meeting weren't registered libertarian. They were registered Republican. And of course, we only allow Republicans, well, I'm sorry, we only allow libertarians to vote for the libertarian candidates for inter-party offices. And Republicans, Democrats do the same thing, the Peace and Freedom Party, the Green Party, etc. There's nothing unique about that. So they literally tried to cheat their way into taking over the Santa Clara Libertarian Party. I've heard rumors that some of the people who attended the state party convention where they took over the California Party, that some people had their hotel bills paid for, their delegate fees paid for, and their membership paid for. And for those who did try to take over the Santa Clara Libertarian Party and literally join the day before our annual convention, 1 year later, all of them, their memberships have lapsed, so they did not renew.
But Mark, I don't know. I'm having some serious flashbacks here, or whatever. I don't even know what it is. You are saying here that the Libertarian Party, the party of liberty and freedom and individualism, is their conduct doesn't differ much from the Republicans or the Democrats. They're buying votes, they're doing all sorts of shenanigans. It sounds to me that what you're saying is that once power comes to anyone, we're going to have a problem. Whether you're a libertarian, you're a Democrat or a Republican, you're the Green Party or wherever. The issues, I mean, if I'm going to believe, and I do believe what you just said, but if I'm going to believe it, you are saying that it does not matter what party you belong to. The corruption is going to take you.
Let me jump in real quick. If you're watching on public access, to get the response to this, you're going to have to go online to hear the rest of the show. We're on Spotify, YouTube. Find us at knuckleheadsofliberty.com. Also Rumble. Go check out that show, the rest of this show, where the conversation continues. And we've had a lot of other interesting interviews as well. So back to the show.
That's called a libertarian cliffhanger.
Well timed, Leon.
So, Leon, to your point, I think you have a good, solid view of the facts. And I don't regularly say this to folks, but that's why I'm an anarchist.
Oh.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I know I don't know that it's fashionable to say I'm an anarchist these days in the Libertarian Party, but again, way back when in some of the earlier conventions, something like 50% of the attendees were, out and out anarchists. And frankly, I don't care how many anarchists are in the Libertarian Party or minarchists or limited government folks. If we're moving to smaller government and less taxation and more freedom, hey, I'm allies with everybody. One of the stories I like to tell is many years ago, another activist by the name of Aaron Starr. I don't know if you guys know of Aaron Starr, but he was a former California state chair. He succeeded me as state chair. And he got an inquiry from the American Muslim Alliance. This is post 9/11, and they were concerned about the Patriot Act. And so Aaron Starr, a Jew, asked me, an atheist, to interface with the American Muslim Alliance, obviously a religious group. And we worked alongside some AIP people, some Republicans, some Democrats, some Green people. And we worked together to have the state legislature, both houses of the state legislature, pass a resolution condemning the unconstitutional parts of the Patriot Act. If the Libertarians had done them by themselves, the Greens or whatever, it would not have flown. But we joined together for a common cause, hatred of the Patriot Act, and we got both houses of the state legislature. And Tom McClintock was one of the ones that I happened to run across in the hallway up in Sacramento, and I gave him like a 30-second pitch, and he said, "I'm on board." and sometimes that's all it takes.
Yes, it does suggest though that I mean, okay, every election cycle, the Libertarians nominate someone, and we go through the election process. We end up with 3%. We don't hear very much about the Libertarians in the interim, and then the next election cycle, we go through the same thing. But from what you have just said, it sounds to me that making alliances probably be more effective in terms of getting our message out. Maybe we're not going to have permanent alliances, but maybe temporary ones to deal with particular issues at any particular time.
Well, again, working in coalitions with other groups, one other hat that I wear, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, Jason, earlier. I mean, I think James knows about this. But one of the other hats I wear is I'm president of the Silicon Valley Taxpayers Association, which is a nonpartisan group. And I have on my board members Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and Independent. And we're all on the same board as far as, or the same viewpoint about we want to keep the taxes at or below what they're currently at. I think in one case in the last 20 years, we supported a tax, and I don't even remember why we supported it, but I think it might have been a reduction of some other tax or some other fee.
Or tax to reduce other taxes.
Yeah, something like that. And this might be a good segue to advertise something for your listeners. One of the things the Silicon Valley Taxpayers Association does is we write ballot arguments against parcel tax bond measures for schools, sales tax increases, property transfer taxes, you name it. And we typically concentrate on San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties. But we would like to extend that all across 58 counties in California. And here's one of the reasons why I think the Libertarian Party should do this and bring it under their auspices. As Leon kind of pointed out, because of election laws, we are being not totally forced out of the election code because of Top 2, but typically most of our candidates disappear after the March primary. But if you submit a ballot argument as the official organization, opposed to, let's say, a parcel tax, as the chair of the Libertarian Party of Sacramento County, as an example, the chances of your argument being accepted and printed in every voter handbook in the district are pretty darn good, because most of these districts, nobody submits an argument against. In fact, it's odd, every once in a while, about every 2 or 3 elections, the proponents do not submit an argument in favor of their tax increase. I'm assuming out of sheer incompetence, but hey, they're government organizations, so what can you expect, right?
Yeah, that might be a good way to get people to recognize that there is a Libertarian Party doing something too. If they open up that pamphlet and they see, hey, the Libertarian Party has a position here.
And you can print your website and a phone number. And so, yeah, I mean, and guess who pays for the distribution and printing? Your tax dollars.
Yeah. Okay. I hope our invisible hand is listening, who also happens to be the Sacramento County chair.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And of course, you can use as many libertarian arguments or as chair of the Silicon Valley Taxpayers Association, I use taxpayer arguments. So, for example, particularly with COVID, you're probably aware that the attendance in most public schools has dropped quite a bit.
Yes.
I mean, there's one high school district down here in Santa Clara County, the Eastside Union High School District. Over 1,000 students have left the school district. Now, it's a 15,000 school district, but 1,000 students have left the district.
Yeah.
And gentlemen, what do you think has happened to the test scores during that period? Up or down?
And they've been probably going
I would
down.
say way down.
Yeah.
Leon wins the cup. Absolutely. And just to give you an example, I live in Morgan Hill, California. The Morgan Hill Unified School District, I kid you not, over 50% of the students are behind grade level in English, and over 68% are behind grade level in math.
Yeah. Well, we've
That
had a
is
really good.
shocking.
That is a scandal and a disgrace.
Well, we've had a really good guest on our show in the past, Larry Sand, who does the California Teachers Empowerment Network, but he talks about a lot of the crazy things that happen with the schools. And one of the things we talked about was what was happening in, I think it was Baltimore's school district, where literally they had 13 schools where not a single kid was what do you call it?
Proficient.
Math
Was
competent.
proficient.
Yeah, proficient. Math proficient. So I mean, it's like that's a statistical miracle. Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, these are usually fill in the bubble tests a lot of times. So, it's just amazing. Yeah.
And of course, they want teachers want pay increases for this. And here in the Bay Area, I would say the lowest paid teacher makes at least $90,000 a year plus benefits. And some of them make well over $100,000 a year with benefits. And of course, they only work 9 months out of the year.
There you go.
And test scores.
I'm sorry, but one of the problems that we have in this society, public school teachers are the only people in this society that are rewarded. Public school teachers and bureaucrats. I used to be one, and Jason is one right now. Public school teachers, though, do the most damage. They are the only people in our society who are rewarded for gross incompetence. That's what goes on all the time. The test scores are falling. Children are not proficient in their subject at their grade level, but the teachers are always looking for higher pay. What madness is this?
Yeah. I can't think of any other business where the signal for failure is more money.
Tell me.
Throw more money into the.
Well,
Tell me.
gentlemen, time out. What about politicians? Don't they get paid? When you call that a profession, I think they call it. Would they put it down on their tax form when they put down their occupation? So, talk about getting rewarded for gross incompetence.
Sure, but there's a commonality there. They're both connected to government.
They're both connected to government. But Tim, I'll take one little issue with your statement, okay? I mean, even though I would agree that the power of incumbency is sometimes hard to overcome, at least we get a chance to vote these damn people out of office. It doesn't work too well because 90%, 95% of them get reelected every cycle. But at least we get a chance to go to the polls to vote these people away. What do you do about the teachers? They get tenure and that's it. That's it.
And the bureaucrats at the ATF, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, all right. So anyway, just don't.
Government is the common thread.
Don't speak in absolutes, gentlemen.
Well, I think we can absolutely say that government is the common thread of all this failure.
Yeah.
I think you'd say that with absolute certainty, yes.
Well, Mark, I did want to touch on a few other things with your background, and we'll probably have to kick the road topic to the curb because we've gone so far into the show. But I did want to ask you, what do you think of the current Libertarian Party movement? I mean, is it? I know you've mentioned the fact that there's some issues with the Mises Caucus, but I guess from a past perspective of somebody who's been there and done that, what advice would you have for the Libertarian Party today on what they can do better to get more libertarians elected and to spread the message better?
Yeah, well, and again, because I've been active since the early 70s, there have been movements in the Libertarian Party that have created ebbs and flows in membership support, et cetera. We too will survive the Mises Caucus takeover. At the National Convention, the vice chair and the treasurer's position went to non-Mises folks. And of course, the presidential and vice presidential candidates were non-Mises. So there is a bit of a chink in their armor. So the thing that I would stress is for people who are longtime advocates and adherents to the libertarian philosophy is stay the course. In some ways, this negative impact on the Mises Caucus, I think it's, in some ways, it's a good sign because it shows that the Libertarian Party is a threat. I mean, Trump attended our national convention. RFK Jr. attended, Vivek attended our convention. That means we have the potential of taking votes away from these guys. That's why they made an appearance. So, and if we continue to grow, I think the threats from the Republicans and the Democrats establishment will probably increase. So it's something we're going to have to look out for. But in kind of a bizarre way, I think it is a sign of progress that we are a threat, that the Green Party is not, let's see, the new party, the no name or no label party.
No labels.
Yeah, I mean, I almost forgot the name No Label. That's how much of an impact they're having, right? So, again, there's going to be internal battles. And one of the things I like to tell, back when I worked at a big company, Big Blue, one of my office mates was a staunch local Democrat. And we used to tell horror stories about, these libertarians, these Democrats. We had the same internal party fighting that the Democrats have, and I've talked to some Republicans. They're in the Democratic Party. The Jews don't like the blacks. The Asians don't like. It's just party politics, and there are the outs and the ins, and the outs don't like the ins, and when the ins become the outs, they don't like the ins. So it's human nature, but I think we are making some impact. And again, look at the polling that says the vast majority of people are not happy with either Trump or Biden.
Well, that brings up a good segue. I did want to ask you too, what do you think about our current candidate? And James, maybe you could bring our invisible hand, you could bring up our image here on the BBB story of Chase Oliver recently winning at the convention. And so Mike Tremont, who was also running for the top spot, wound up becoming his VP candidate in kind of a very wild ride that we talked about a few shows ago. and so it seems like a very interesting contrast. Chase Oliver, much younger than the other two. Certainly, we've had him on the show. He sounded very principled on many liberty issues. So he's also, I don't like to get into identity politics, but he also, manages to be able to reach out to the LGBTQ community as well, because he identifies in that group. So there's, it does seem like we've got a chance maybe to get some traction. But it is funny, the Mises Caucus, a lot of them said after he got the nominee that they were going to vote for Trump. So anyways, what do you think about our current candidate and our chances here to really get some attention on our party?
I am just pleased as punch. I voted for Mike twice in the early ballots. And I was very pleased when it looked like Chase was going to go in the lead. And I kind of anticipated that Chase would be the presidential candidate. And I was crossing my fingers and my toes, hoping that he'd pick Mike, because again, Mike, not only does he look presidential, he talks presidential. He came to Santa Clara County, I think, well over a year before the national convention, so he campaigned the longest, as did Chase. Both of them campaigned well over a year to seek the nomination. So as far as the meritocracy within the Libertarian Party, the two top candidates that campaigned the longest and the best wound up being our presidential and vice presidential candidate. So kudos for the delegates, making smart choices. And again, Mike Termat, PhD in economics, I think 10 and a half years, 11 years in law enforcement, worked in the White House. He's got street creds as far as DC politics is concerned. And again, every time I listen to Chase, it's like, wow, what a great speaker. I mean, this guy never gets flummoxed. He's got staunch, hardcore answers to every question. I'm just delighted. And I urge everybody to contribute to his campaign. And I just couldn't be happier.
When two other caveats about real quickly on two other caveats about both of those candidates as well that we brought out on the show. And one, Chase is a Trekkie. So if you're a Trekkie, you got a solid Trekkie fan here. So vote Libertarian on that. And by the way, Mike Termat is actually his group has put out this thing called Lisa, which is the Libertarian AI. And we talked about that on the show as well. And so when we have all these other crazy AIs out there, we compare the answers for his Lisa with those others, and oh gosh, I'm trying to think of what was Google's AI? I can't remember. That had all those crazy propaganda coming out of it, and there was a few others. But anyways, it was actually kind of a fun thing. We said we'd have him back on the show again to actually have a more formal contest between the AIs. So there's some interesting caveats that a lot of people may not know about these candidates that we wanted to make sure they know about on Knuckleheads of Liberty. So go ahead, Leon.
So Mark, I mean, I know at the end of the convention, many in the Mises caucus have made it clear they will not vote for Chase Oliver. Is there any way that you can articulate some of their objections?
Well, I'm probably the last person that should address or reach out to the Mises caucus. Maybe somebody who's maybe a former Mises caucus, or some people who are quote unquote neutral, because. I really would like people in the Mises caucus to stay in the Libertarian Party, but the leadership that seems to be directing their votes, I wouldn't mind them disappearing from the Libertarian Party, because again, it's just so antithetical about what it means to be an individual in the Libertarian Party. It is, as I think Jason said, it sounds really collectivist, and that's not who we are, and we never have been that way. But again, just use persuasion, use logic, use reason, and I think some of the people who are been excommunicated from the Mises caucus, that's how they've weaned themselves. They listen to the facts, and they look at the Mises caucus making dumb decisions. And I've pointed out in Facebook many pages. Membership is down, fundraising is down, LP News has ceased publication. There's a for rent sign on the LP headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia. The number of elected libertarians is down. Ballot status in all 50 states. It'll take an arm and a leg to get ballot status in New York. And again, pointing out that we made it in the last time around. Gary Johnson and Joe Jorgensen both had 50 state ballot status because we are more and more a threat. The New York State Legislature, I think, doubled the signature requirement. So clearly they view us as a threat. So in the short term, yeah, it's going to hurt, but in the long term, they recognize we are a threat, and we are a threat, and we're coming for you.
Well, speaking of ballot access, that does bring up one of the topics I wanted to touch on the show today. And one of the interesting things that has happened, that although the Libertarian candidate doesn't have enough, of at the moment to get on that debate stage with the main candidates at the moment, but RFK Jr., who showed up, actually is close to those criterias. And apparently CNN has just gone out and they've started negotiating with both Trump and Biden to set the debates without even considering any of these other candidates. And so, James, maybe you could bring up the visual here. So there's an article here from The Hill that talks about RFK Jr. filing an FEC complaint because apparently this violates potentially campaign finance laws, because this is like a contribution potentially to these campaigns. And in fact, we actually have a little bit of interesting video that came out of the Hill on this as well too, where Larry Sharp was a guest, who we've also had on the show, but he is an expert at somebody who has been victimized by two parties trying to keep him off the ballot in New York. So he really has some good perspective. And so, James, maybe you could play KOL number 2. So KOL number 1's out, but KOL number 2.
Lawsuit that was filed about objective criteria, and it does seem that there is criteria laid out by the FEC, specifically being constitutionally eligible, appearing on a sufficient number of state ballots, and having a chance, or 15%, of winning votes in the Electoral College. So which of these did CNN end up violating?
Every single one of them.
That was great. It just violated every single one. But now he gets into the specifics, and that would have been a long clip. So let's go to KOL 3 now, and then we can really hear Sharp's analysis of what's going on here.
Because it was not actually objective or pre-established early on, the criteria also, the funny part is, the only person who actually does actually fit the criteria is Bobby Kennedy Jr. RFK is the only one. The other two candidates, Trump and Biden, are not on the ballot in any states. They are the presumed or presumptive candidate. And that's something that CNN decided to just make up. And I'm not making that up. They made it up, not me. There's no such thing as presumptive candidate in state law, no such thing as presumptive candidate in FEC rules and regulations. Nowhere is that a thing. They just decided that. And then they said to themselves, well, because they're presumptive, we don't have to put criteria on them. We'll just put it on Bobby Kennedy. And they know they did it on purpose. Their own reporting said that if they do it this way, it might weed out, their words, not mine, it might weed out some third-party candidates.
And of course, libertarians are almost always a victim of that as well. Just one of the many challenges we're always facing. And we saw that with Gary Johnson, where it looked like he was going to break that threshold. And then they just sort of changed all the rules on him at the last minute as well. What are your thoughts on that, Mark? I mean, you've probably seen a lot of these shenanigans over your time in libertarian politics.
Yeah, well, one thing that I like to harken back, this goes back, I think, in the 1930s. In Florida, in order to maintain ballot status, the political parties, the Republicans, Democrat, had to, I think, get 20% of the vote for president. When Roosevelt was elected, he got more than 80% of the vote. So obviously the GOP candidate, and I don't remember who it was, got less than 20%. That meant by Florida law, the Republican Party was going to be dropped off the ballot. Now, you can imagine how that would look. So they changed the law because, of course, you couldn't have just a one-party state. But
unless you're California. No,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, if we become a threat, there's going to be more stuff like this. And we just have to continue to fight against it. And the plus side is, our allies in a strange Kafkian way are the Republicans and Democrats, because they continue to screw up left, right, and center they are literally driving people away from the Republican and Democratic Party. Here in Santa Clara County, where I live, Democrats are number one, independents are number two, Republicans are number three.
You know,
Wow.
while I would say that Larry Sharp have made some good points in that little video clip you played, Jason, I'm not sure that this complaint that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. filed will succeed. Because what we are talking about here is CNN, which is a private organization, have invited people to participate in what we're going to call a debate. It's not really a debate, it's a joint news conference, really and truly. It's not a debate. But so they have invited two people, right? And they have some criteria. Well, they've invited, I guess, anybody to participate in the debate that meets certain criteria. Now, these are not government mandates. These are the mandates of a private organization, CNN. And you could sure like hear CNN in no way want to hear Donald Trump. They may want to hear Joe Biden, but I can bet you they don't want to hear Donald Trump. So I don't see why his complaint should succeed, because we are still talking about a private organization inviting people to a debate under certain conditions. And it's given to all of the candidates who are out there. Robert F. Kennedy, you don't qualify based upon their criteria. But the Trump campaign, the Biden campaign, and CNN are all private organizations, as is the Robert F. Kennedy campaign. It's a private organization. So I don't see how this will qualify as some kind of in-kind contribution. I don't get it.
Leon, I think that in a libertarian world, you're absolutely right. I mean, everybody should be able to just make whatever message they want to the public. But we do have these campaign finance laws that are on the book. And so he's saying that literally there are these rules that are supposed to be that they're holding everybody else to. And yet somehow they aren't applying to the Democratic and Republican Party, I guess. It sounds like, at least in this case, and with respect to CNN, that they're saying that by excluding everybody else when they're, I guess, doing it under the guise of the campaign finance laws, that it runs afoul of some of these FEC definitions. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, so I guess we'll have to see what happens in the courts, but or with the FEC rather, and their judgment on this.
Well, I'm not an expert in campaign finance law. I just play one on TV.
Yeah.
but I don't see how this complaint could work, because they set out some criterias, and who meet the criteria come, who can't meet the criteria can't come. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, Leon, remember these FEC rules and regulations and these laws were created by Republicans and Democrats. They were not put there to help the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the American Independent Party, the LaRousse and the NIDA. No challengers to the R&Ds were consulted in any of these regulations.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, just from here in California, if you want to run as a libertarian, you have to file forms with the California Political Practice Commission. And, if you really want to do it right, you probably should hire a CPA or some sort of accountant to do it, because otherwise, if you run afoul, you're going to have to pay fines. And again, this is all to favor the establishment R&Ds, not the challengers.
Sure, fair enough. I accept that.
It just seems like yet another in a long line of keeping any of the competition sidelined. And that's what the rules seem to be for.
I mean, no matter what you look at, is minimum wage laws, licensing laws. The last time I checked, Richard Ryder in his Breaking Bad California website pointed out, I think it was like 171 licensed jobs here in California, which is the most of any state in the nation. And when you put a license on it, do you include people or do you exclude people? You exclude people. And that drives up the price. And you and I, as a consumer, we pay more for plumbers and electricians and hairstylists. And of course, one of the is everybody here familiar with the Institute for Justice?
Yeah, I think didn't they represent the group that was suing the unions about the union membership, or maybe I'm mixing them up.
Could be the one instance that I'm kind of favorite of quoting. There was a gal, I believe, in Southern California who did like corn rolling. You know, the black hair braiding.
Braiding. Yes, I know. Yes.
Yeah, and she did not have a cosmetology license, which requires 1,600 hours of training. And you know how many hours of that 1,600 has to do with braiding hair?
Yeah.
Where's zero?
Yeah.
They sued and actually won, thank goodness. But again, this is some of the nonsense that we get brought with licensing laws. You've probably heard recently the $20 minimum wage law for fast food workers.
Yeah.
Already over 10,000 workers have been laid off. I think it was at Pizza Hut, laid off 1,200 drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
It's a barrier.
Yeah, these people make these vacuum policies. They make these policies. They institute these policies and think they will have no effect upon the behavior of consumers and suppliers. They just make these laws like everything is just going to fall in place out of thin air, and we're going to have this utopia. It's just insane. You're absolutely right. It's just insane.
And the sad thing is some of them know better, because I remember when Jerry Brown was on his way out of office, he actually put into law one of the increases in minimum wage he signed that was going to take effect, I think, after he left at some point. But he literally said when he was being interviewed about it, he said, well, we certainly are aware that many economists say this probably isn't going to, do much good, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. I remember that one. Yes.
Just terrible. But yeah,
that's because his donors wanted it, and so he's bought and paid for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, speaking of bought and paid for, I guess we're almost to that point in the show where we're at the end here, and so that's usually where we go into our knucklehead noise patrol of somebody saying something kind of crazy or doing something kind of crazy. And in this case, we're going to talk about Biden again, but it's going to be because of I guess yet another video where he was caught sort of maybe looking like he wasn't all there, but part of the issue here too is the response in the media to it. So we'll get into that. But let's start by showing this video where he was at a Juneteenth celebration, which is kind of ties into Juneteenth. Oh, I forgot to say it's. I did say it was Juneteenth at the beginning. So this brings it all back to Juneteenth. But he was at a celebration at the White House, and he seemed to almost kind of be completely disconnected. So here's a video clip. It's KNP 1.
That's how it's supposed to be. One more time, come on. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you.
So he almost seemed to be kind of disconnected until the person sitting next to him sort of reached out and put his hand on him, and that sort of seemed to almost bring him back. At least that's kind of what it appeared. And if this only happened one time, I don't think anybody would say anything. But there's been an awful lot of videos, and so one of the things that's kind of crazy is that I guess now they're trying to say that if you've got one of these videos, it's a cheap fake is what the White House is calling him. Yeah. So James, maybe you could bring up the visual here. So here's an article from Newsweek where White House calls these videos fakes. And it's, of course, the Republicans are trying to hit back saying, no, these are real videos. And so now we're having this epistemological argument over what's knowledge, what's real, and what's not. It's interesting because you see a lot of this reporting in the news. Like here's an article from the Hill that says, "Hey, it's cheap fake videos burst into national spotlight." So they're going right along with what the White House is saying, and yet the Hill also has a show called Rising with Robbie Suave, and I guess they're kind of have a they're shuffling hosts right now for his counterpart. But there they literally came out and said, nope, these videos are real. And they looked at them and talked about them on the show. Fox News is also coming to say, no, we have not doctored these. These are real videos. But I mean, it's like we can't even get to the point where we can agree on what we're seeing. And the gaslighting's amazing. And I thought there was a video that Morning Joe put out a couple months ago. And I feel like we can all see Joe Biden. We can kind of all see what's happening in the economy. And yet we're being told that it's the greatest thing ever. And so here is the article on Joe Scarborough saying he's the best ever. In fact, we have a video of that as well. So, James, can you play KNP2 real quick so you can just see how outlandish it is? I mean, how far out on the edge.
Put your tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
So I overlapped the video of the so you can kind of see, here's literally one of the anchors of a news station saying this is the best Biden ever. So it's absolutely nuts. But this is also seeing what we're seeing here. It does kind of make you feel like how far gone is Biden? There's memes out there. Some people. Here's a movie of a popular movie called Weekend at Bernie's from a long time ago. They're essentially running around a guy who's departed, trying to make it look like he's alive. Yes. And we have a little clip from the movie as well. So, James, could you show KNP3 as well, just so people can kind of get what the joke is here?
Here we go. Hi, Bernie. Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh? Bernie!
Bernie? All right. Okay. Look me in the eye. 50,000. Yes. I knew it. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you so much. This guy's like family. You're beautiful. Bernie. Jesus. Oh, God.
It kind of feels like that's we're living it. But what do you guys think about this? I mean, it's sort of like, we're being told by one side that he's the best ever, and that any video that you see that says counter to that is a lie. And on the other hand, we're seeing stuff out there that says, hey, this feels like this is really happening. What do you guys think?
Well, if you allow me, I think I'm going to, for the first time, agree with Joe Scarborough. The comatose Biden is the best Biden ever.
If only he would be comatose all the time.
Yeah. I have to agree with Mark.
When I first saw that video, I thought it was a cardboard cutout, and until he kind of moved his head, like, I mean, he was like frozen in time.
The only better version of the current president is if he was completely and actually and truthfully comatose. We wouldn't have to listen to him anymore, and so on. So that's a better version, if you ask me.
You might be right about that. Yeah.
That brings up the bigger question: who is the president now? Because it isn't Biden.
Right. It's Barack Obama. There's no doubt about that. Barack Obama is running the country. They wouldn't admit that, but he's running the country. I bet money on that one, quite frankly.
All right.
But the point is though, if you saw, there's another video of there with some fancy fundraiser here in California, I think in the Los Angeles area, if I'm not mistaken. And the music was, it was done, and the music was playing, and everybody was, kind of clapping and stuff like that. And they were a little bit waving the Obama and one of them night show hosts or somebody, and Biden was there waving to the crowd. And then after a while, Biden just stopped, and he was like frozen.
Mitch
Just
McConnell frozen.
I'm telling you. And Obama reached out, grabbed his fist, just like Jill Biden does, grab his fist and tugs him a little bit, and then puts his hand on his shoulder and walks him off the stage. And you could just look at Biden walking off that stage, and you know this is a near comatose man. You could know it. It's as obvious. You see, the problem we have right now, and Mark, you asked the right question, who is running the country? Because it sure like hell is not Joe Biden. I could bet money on that one too, okay? Now, I believe it's Barack Obama is running the country right now. I think he's the one who's making all the call, and whatever he tells Joe to sign, which of course there's a lot of things the president must sign, he will sign it. But that is what is going on. We are living in dangerous times. And the worst thing about it, the media is conspiring with the DNC to take this comatose man across the line to give them another 4 years. Well, you're not gonna make 4 years. Kamala will become president, I guess, after maybe a month into the so-called presidency. But the media is in on this, and it is dangerous because the last election, you know what they did to us? They told us that, that laptop from Hunter, it was Russian disinformation. Okay? That's what they told us. They got 51 intelligence officers to tell us, oh, that looked like a hallmark of Russian disinformation. Talk about a deep fake. Talk about a deep fake. And you know what just happened? A week ago, 2 weeks ago, that very laptop was used to convict Biden's son on some gun charge or something like that. There's a lot of
fake laptop was used in court.
Could you imagine that? That fake laptop, that one, that same one that was the hallmark of Russian disinformation, that was used in court and authenticated by an FBI agent. Imagine that. So what I'm wondering right now, okay, and here I'm going off track a little bit. What I'm wondering right now, what is the deep fake these people are planning for us, since this comatose man could not make it over the finish line on his own? I'm wondering what they're planning for us, because they're planning something. It must be.
Well, you're kind of stealing the hook I was going to give us at the end of the show. I mean, beyond the point that I wanted to just say that, hey, look, this does beg the question of, do we even need a president? This is our current president. But there is an article from Politico here, and James, maybe you could bring this up real quick. So it says Dems in full-blown freak out over Biden. So this is a few weeks old here, but they're talking about just his current state, and they're not sure what's going to happen with him, I guess, with more and more of these happening. And of course, here's a polling from the 538 project, I guess, and they are showing essentially that it just doesn't look too good for Biden, over the course of his presidency here. So I guess the thing I wanted to ask you guys after seeing all this, what is your prediction? I mean, do you think that, Biden is going to be on the ticket, or do you think there'll be somebody else? I mean, personally, I think they've been grooming Gavin Newsom this whole time. And even though he keeps tripping over his own feet, I think he's still going to be the only guy who, even if he's stumbling, looks like the guy who's polished enough to be there. What do you guys think?
Mark, go please.
Fairly convinced Trump will be the next president of the United States. I'm cautiously hopeful that Chase will be our best vote getter ever. He's got a high hurdle to jump because of Gary Johnson, former governor. I think it was at 3.4% of the vote. I don't remember the exact percentage, but that's the high mark. For us, I don't know if Chase and Mike Matt can do that. If RFK Jr. were not on the ballot, I suspect we'd have a real good chance of that. So he's kind of the monkeying with the wrench, mucking things up for us. Although I suspect we're going to be on more state ballots than RFK Jr. So again, that might bode well for us. And one thing that I would make to, and I do make to average voters, particularly here in California, your one vote for Trump or Biden is not going to change the outcome of the election. So if you're a libertarian or anti-Republican, anti-Democrat, or frankly, pro-freedom in any way, shape, or form, voting for Chase and Mike Dermott is obviously the best vote, or even another third party, just to show your dissatisfaction. Because if we continue doing the R&D, guess what? We're going to get more R&D crap. And that's not going to be good for anybody, Republican, Democrat, or independent.
Yeah.
Tim, go.
If I'm put in a corner, what you said, Leon, made a lot of sense. Because I'm no political expert. I hate all politics, to be honest. But I think that there's too many other people that can take stuff away from Trump, or there's nobody that can take anything away from Biden. I mean, and people are just so, the people that vote for him are just so enamored of just not having a Trump that they'll do anything to do that, to vote for Biden back in. But I also think that a few months later, it's going to be Kamala as president, because Biden will either die or he'll be considered, will be ruled by the rulers above, whoever's pulling strings, to say, this guy he can't even tie his own shoes, let alone, be the president. So I think that's quite possible. And then we'll have another nightmare of a Kamala Harris presidency. And who knows what could happen there? That's another nice. That's my cynical viewpoint, and so take it for what it's worth.
And Tim, let's all pray it doesn't happen.
Yeah, yes. Well, I think there's a good chance that Trump will return to the White House, but I am really kind of concerned about what the Democrats have planned for us. What is their deep fake that they're going to ram down our throats like they did the last time in 2020, which I think changed the outcome of the election. So I am really, really concerned about what is the deep fake they are planning for us. They are planning something, and I don't know what it is, obviously, because if I knew, we could, it could be exposed and everybody will know, what to look for and what not to get all worked up about. But I think there's a good chance Trump will return to the White House.
Okay.
Leon, it's probably a good thing you don't know, because they might want to assassinate you if you did.
Damn. Oh, it's one of those things where I can tell you, but I'll have to kill you, Yeah, I know. Yes.
Well, I tell you, I think on that sad note of where we're headed in this election, do you have any final thoughts, Mark, that you wanted to leave the audience with? And I know too you're planning on organizing some booth stuff at the California State Fair. Did you want to give a shout out on any of that, or any other plans that you're working on?
Yeah. The LP will have a booth at the California State Fair, Building D. So it'll be an air-conditioned booth 505. And we're looking for volunteers to staff the booth for 4 hours, and then we can release them and go out and enjoy the fair and have a free admission pass on us. If you'd like to connect with me, my email address is exceedingly simple. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, @garlic.com. And let me know if you're interested, and we'll sign you up and get you a will call ticket to enter the fair for free. And free. You have to do your 4 hours worth of labor, but no tax withholding.
Yeah.
Okay.
No free lunches, obviously.
And that's Mark at garlic.com. So thanks so much again for joining us, Mark, on the show. And if you're watching this, we're trying to bring you people who've been organizing and doing stuff for the Liberty movement to help you get a sense of maybe what your role could be or how you can get involved. So, if you like this show, check out some of our other shows also where we've talked to a lot of different people who are doing a lot of different things, and try and figure out what you can do before the next show so that we can get your help too, because I tell you, we need all hands on deck if we're going to turn the ship in the other direction. So thanks so much for watching us. Until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.